The transport ship shook as it passed through the docking field. Park held tightly to the metal handle above her seat and watched through the small window. Station 7 grew larger and larger until it filled her entire view. It was massive. The station was shaped like a spinning wheel, with lights blinking along every surface. Ships of all sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. Had never seen anything so big in her entire life. Back on Earth, she had lived in a small town in the mountains of Korea. Her grandmother's house had no view of cities or tall buildings, just trees, rocks, and sky. Now she was looking at a structure that held 2 million beings from across the galaxy. She was one of 12 humans chosen for the Galactic Coalition Military Academy. It was an honor that most people on Earth could not even dream of. The Coalition had only made contact with humanity 15 years ago. Humans were still considered a young species. They had no starships of their own. They had won no wars among the stars. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a small blue rock filled with beings who had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. The transport landed with a gentle bump. The other passengers stood and gathered their bags. Most of them were aliens. Saw tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms. She saw short beings covered in brown fur with large black eyes. She saw things she had no words for. They all moved past her without a second look. Waited until most of them had left. Then she reached under her seat and pulled out a long black case. It was made of hard plastic and had her name written on the side in both Korean and Galactic Common. She held it close to her chest as she walked off the ship. The docking bay was enormous. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. Hundreds of species walked in every direction. The sound of different languages filled the air. Translator implant worked hard to keep up. It turned the alien words into Korean inside her head, but some phrases did not translate well. She found her way to the Academy registration area. A line of new cadets waited to receive their assignments, joined the line and noticed the stairs. Several aliens looked at her long case with curiosity. One of them, a creature with gray skin and no visible eyes, leaned close to its companion and made a clicking sound. The translator told it was laughing. She ignored it. After an hour of waiting, received her room assignment, her uniform, and her schedule. The first official event was weapons orientation. All new cadets were required to attend. They would present their chosen specialty weapons and receive evaluation from the instructors. Returned to her small room in the cadet housing block. The room was simple. It had a bed, a desk, a small bathroom, and nothing else. She placed her case on the bed and opened it carefully. Inside was a sword. It was a traditional Korean straight sword. The blade was about 70 centimeters long and made of folded steel. The handle was wrapped in dark blue cord. The guard was simple brass. It was not decorated with gold or jewels. It was a weapon meant for use, not for display. Her grandmother had given it to her on the day she left Earth. The old woman had placed it in his hands and said nothing. She did not need to. Understood. This sword had been in their family for 8 generations. Every person who carried it had trained with it since childhood. The blade had tasted blood in wars that happened before electricity existed. It was older than most nations on Earth. Closed the case and went to the orientation hall. The hall was shaped like a half circle, with rows of seats facing a raised platform. Hundreds of cadets sat in the seats. Found a spot near the back and sat down with her case across her knees. She could see 11 other humans scattered through the crowd. They wore the same gray cadet uniform as everyone else. The instructor walked onto the platform. He was one of the most respected warrior species in the Coalition. He stood nearly 3 meters tall. His body was covered in scales that changed color as he moved, shifting from green to blue to silver. His face was something between a lizard and an insect. 2 large eyes sat above a mouth filled with small, sharp teeth. 4 mandibles clicked around his jaw when he spoke. His name was, and he had commanded soldiers in 3 galactic wars. "Welcome to the Academy," said. His voice was deep and rough. The translator made it sound calm, but there was hardness underneath. "You are here because someone believed you had value. Over the next 2 years, we will find out if they were correct." He walked to a table covered with weapons. Could see plasma rifles, photon lances, neural disruptors, and many other things she did not recognize. Each weapon glowed or hummed with power. "These are the tools of modern warfare," said. He picked up a plasma rifle and held it easily in one hand. "This weapon can vaporize titanium armor at 300 meters. It can fire 800 shots before needing a new power cell. It has no recoil. It does not jam. It does not care if you are tired or scared or dying. It will kill your enemy with the same efficiency on your first day of battle as on your last." He set the rifle down and picked up a smaller device. "This is a neural disruptor. It attacks the nervous system of any organic target. 1 shot causes paralysis. 2 shots cause death. It works on every known species in the galaxy." Turned to face the cadets. His scales shifted to a dark red color. "You will each present your chosen specialty weapon. You will explain why you selected it. If your choice is acceptable, you will proceed to advanced training. If your choice is foolish, you will be reassigned to basic infantry. Step forward when I call your name." The presentations began. Cadet after cadet walked to the platform and showed their weapons. Most chose plasma rifles or photon lances. Some chose more exotic things like gravity hammers or sonic blades. The instructors nodded with approval at each selection. The 11 other humans all presented ranged energy weapons. They had chosen wisely. They did not want to stand out or cause problems. They wanted to prove that humans could match the other species. Then called name. She walked to the platform with her case. The hall grew quiet. Something about her manner made the other cadets pay attention. She climbed the steps slowly and stood before. Cadet Park said, "Present your weapon." Opened the case. She reached inside and drew the sword. The steel blade caught the light and reflected it across the walls. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the hall exploded with sound. Clicks, whistles, barks, and growls filled the air. The translator struggled to process it all but did not need translation. She knew laughter when she heard it. Raised one hand and the noise stopped. He looked down at with an expression she could not read. His mandibles clicked slowly. "Cadet Park," he said, "is this a joke?" "No, instructor. That is a blade made of metal, primitive metal." "Yes, instructor, it is folded steel." Leaned closer. His scales turned almost black. "Steel cannot stop plasma. You understand this. 1 shot from the weakest weapon on this table would destroy your sword and your arm and half of your body. You would be dead before you knew you were in danger." Did not look away. She did not lower her sword. "This is my weapon, instructor." The hall was completely silent now. Every cadet watched the confrontation, stared at for a long moment. Then his mandibles clicked rapidly. More alien laughter. "This is not a museum, Cadet Park. Return tomorrow with a real weapon. You are dismissed." Sheathed her sword. She closed her case. She turned and walked down the steps and through the silent hall. She could feel every eye on her back. At the door, she paused for just a moment. Then she walked out without looking back. In his office that night, opens cadet file and added a note, "Remedial status, likely washout, psychological evaluation recommended." He did not understand humans. He did not try to understand them. They were primitives from a primitive world, and this one was more primitive than most. He closed the file and forgot about her. The weeks that followed were hard. Woke every morning at 5 and trained until midnight. She ran through the obstacle courses. She studied tactics and strategy. She learned about alien biology and starship systems. She did everything the other cadets did and more. But she never changed her weapon. The other cadets noticed. At first, they just stared and whispered. Then they started talking openly. They called her names in languages her translator did not recognize. Some of them laughed every time she walked past. Others shook their heads with something like pity. The worst was a species known for their strength and their pride. He stood over 2 meters tall with arms as thick as tree trunks. His skin was dark purple and covered with small bumps that served as natural armor. He had small yellow eyes and a mouth full of flat grinding teeth. They were herbivores, but nobody would call them gentle. Their history was filled with wars and conquest. Had the highest marksmanship scores in the entire cadet program. He could hit a moving target at 500 meters while running at full speed. The instructors praised him constantly. Other cadets followed him around like pets. He was going to be something great, everyone said. He was going to command fleets. And he hated the museum piece, he called her. He said it loudly enough for everyone to hear. Look, the primitive is going to training. Maybe she will learn to throw rocks today. His followers laughed. They always laughed. Said nothing. She walked past them and went to her training. The human squad tried to help her. There were 12 of them in total, and they shared a common bond. They were all far from home. They were all seen as lesser by the other species. They should have supported each other. Was the unofficial leader of the human group. He was tall and thin with a serious face. He had trained with plasma rifles since he was 16 and was genuinely skilled. The instructors respected him. He had a chance to make something of himself here. One evening he found in the cargo bay. She was practicing her sword forms alone. The bay was empty and dark except for one light above her head. She moved through the positions slowly, each cut precise and controlled. Said, "We need to talk." She finished her form and lowered her blade. About what? About this, he pointed at her sword. About what you are doing to yourself, to all of us. Wiped her blade with a cloth. I am doing my training, the same as everyone. No, you are making a statement, I understand that. You want to show that humans have culture and history and tradition. I respect that, but this is not the place for statements. Stepped closer. Every time they laugh at you, they laugh at all of us. Every time calls you primitive, he means all of us. You are not just hurting yourself. You are hurting humanity's reputation in this academy. Looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. Do you know why I carry this sword? Because your family gave it to you. Because it has sentimental value. I understand. But there are more important things than sentiment. No, shook her head. That is not why. She walked to the wall and sat down with her back against the cold metal. Hesitated, then sat beside her. My grandmother raised me, said. My parents died when I was 3, car accident. I do not even remember them, just photographs and stories. My grandmother took me to her house in the mountains. She was old even then, 75 years old, but she trained me every day, rain or snow or burning summer heat. We trained. In sword fighting. In everything. Running, climbing, breathing, cutting. She said the sword was not a weapon. She said it was a mirror. It showed you who you really were. If you were afraid, your cuts would be weak. If you were angry, your cuts would be wild. If you were empty inside, your cuts would have no purpose. Was quiet for a moment. That is a nice philosophy, but philosophy does not stop plasma bolts. My grandmother stopped 17 men with this sword. Blinked to what? During the unification riots, before I was born, a mob came to our village looking for government officials. They had guns and knives and fire. My grandmother was 62 years old. She stood in the street with this sword and told them to leave. And they left. Not at first. 3 of them attacked her. She killed 2 and crippled the 3rd in about 4 seconds. The rest ran away, touched the blade gently. She was not a soldier. She was a retired school teacher, but she trained every single day of her life. When the moment came, she was ready. Did not know what to say. He sat in silence for a while. Then he stood up and looked down at. I hope you know what you are doing, he said. Because if this goes wrong, it will not just be your failure. It will be proof that humans do not belong here. He walked away, watched him go, then stood and returned to her practice. She trained until her arms ached. She trained until sweat soaked her uniform. She trained until the first light of morning came through the cargo bay windows. Then she went to her room, showered, and reported for daily exercises. Instructor did not forget about her. He assigned her to every punishment detail he could find. When the latrines needed cleaning, cleaned them. When the equipment needed sorting, sorted it. When the night patrols needed extra bodies, walked the empty corridors until dawn. He was trying to break her. She knew this. He wanted her to give up and go home in shame. He wanted to prove that humans were weak. She did not break. Something else happened instead. In the close quarters combat simulations started winning. The simulations used training weapons that caused pain but no real damage. Cadets fought each other in small rooms and narrow corridors. Points were scored for hits to vital areas. Most cadets used training rifles or pistols set to low power. Used her sword. The first time her opponent was a small, quick species with 4 legs and 2 arms. He was fast and accurate with his training pistol. He expected an easy victory against the primitive human. Crossed the distance between them before he could fire a second shot. Her blade touched his throat. The simulation ended. Victory for Cadet Park. Everyone thought it was luck. The second time she fought a cadet almost as large as himself. He was strong and confident. He did not even try to shoot her. He thought he could simply grab her and throw her to the ground. He was wrong. Moved around him like water around a rock. Her blade found the gaps in his guard. She scored 12 hits before the simulation ended. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, kept winning. Her record in close quarters combat became perfect. No losses, no ties, just victories. Her opponents could not understand what was happening. Their targeting systems were designed to track energy weapons and powered armor. They were not designed to track a simple blade moving at human speed. Their training had taught them to fight at range. No one in the galaxy used swords anymore. No one trained to defend against them. Had trained her entire life. Looked at her combat records. He dismissed them as statistical noise. Close quarters simulations are not real combat, he told the other instructors. In real battle, she would be dead in the first 10 seconds. But the medic of the human squad saw something different. She watched fight and she understood something that did not. The galaxy had forgotten how to fight up close. Remembered. And when the time came, that memory would matter more than anyone knew. The alarm came at midnight. Was in the cargo bay, practicing her forms as she did every night. The red lights started flashing and a loud horn filled the station. She sheathed her sword and ran to the assembly point. All the cadets gathered in the main briefing hall. Hundreds of them stood in neat rows, waiting for information. The instructors stood on the platform with serious faces, even looked worried. Nobody knew what was happening. Stepped forward and the hall went silent. 1 hour ago, we received a distress signal from Research Station 9, he said. His voice was flat and cold. The station has gone dark. All communication has stopped. Initial scans show life signs, but they are strange, moving in patterns that do not match normal behavior. He touched a control and a holographic image appeared above the platform. It showed a small station floating in the darkness of space. The station was shaped like a cylinder with several modules attached. It looked damaged. Some sections were dark, others flickered with unstable power. 9 was conducting biological research near the hollow expanse. 3 days ago, they reported the discovery of a new organism. They called it remarkable. They called it the greatest find in decades. Paused, his scales turned dark gray. The organism was. A wave of sound moved through the hall, clicks and whispers and hisses of fear. Everyone knew about They were one of the few things that united the galaxy in horror. were parasites. They were small, about the size of a human fist, with dozens of thin legs and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. They entered a body through any opening they could find. Then they took control. They ate the brain slowly, replacing it with themselves. The victim stayed alive but was no longer in control. They became puppets, weapons, tools for the hive. A single could infect one body, but they bred fast. Within days, one could become hundreds. Within weeks, thousands. They had destroyed entire planets before the Coalition learned how to fight them. Standard protocol recommends orbital bombardment, continued. Burn the station, kill everything inside, end the threat before it spreads. He looked out at the cadets. But 47 Coalition scientists remain alive in the station's sealed core. They have barricaded themselves in the central laboratory. They are running out of air. If we do nothing, they die. If we bomb the station, they die. What are our orders? Someone asked. A rescue mission has been authorized. We will send assault teams into the station. We will fight through and reach the survivors. We will bring them home. The hall buzzed with energy. This was real combat, real danger, not simulations or exercises. Cadets would fight and possibly die. Began calling names. He selected the best cadets for the assault teams, was first. His entire fire team followed. Other top performers joined them, the best of the best. The human squad was not called. When the selections were finished, raised his hand. Instructor, what about us? Looked at him with cold eyes. The human squad will provide perimeter security. You will guard the transport ships and monitor communications. You will not enter the station. But we are trained for combat. We can help. You are inexperienced. You are untested. You would be a liability inside the station. Turned away. Those are your orders. His face turned red with anger, but he said nothing more. The other humans looked at each other with frustration. They had come so far and trained so hard. Now they were being left behind like children. Said nothing. She simply listened and waited. The mission began 3 hours later. Transport ships carried the assault teams to 9. The human squad stayed behind on a support vessel, monitoring the feeds from the team's helmet cameras. Watched the screens carefully. She saw the assault teams enter the station through the main airlock. The corridors inside were dark and filled with floating debris. Emergency lights flickered red. The power was failing. The first contact came quickly. Movement ahead, reported through his communicator. Multiple targets. They look like the station crew. They were the station crew, or what was left of them. They had taken their bodies. They moved in jerky, unnatural ways. Their eyes were empty. Their mouths hung open. Some of them still wore their research uniforms. Open fire, ordered from the command ship. Plasma bolts lit up the corridor. The infected crew fell one by one. The assault teams moved forward. So far, so good. But the learned. Within minutes, they changed their tactics. Instead of charging straight at the assault teams, they started using the bodies as shields. They would grab pieces of metal and hold them up to block the plasma fire. When the cadets tried to aim for gaps, they would throw their bodies forward, closing the distance before anyone could react. In close quarters, plasma weapons became dangerous. One missed shot burned through a wall and almost breached the hull. Another hit a gas line and caused an explosion that injured 2 cadets. The assault teams had to stop firing and fight hand-to-hand. They were not prepared for hand-to-hand. They were not skilled fighters. Their movements were clumsy and slow, but there were many of them and they felt no pain. They would grab cadets and bite and scratch until someone pulled them away. Even a small wound could be dangerous. If any fluid got into the bloodstream, infection could begin. And his team reached the central section of the station. They were ahead of schedule. Victory seemed possible. Then the floor collapsed. It was a trap that had weakened the supports. When the assault team walked across, the metal gave way. 8 cadets fell into the level below. They landed in a large storage room with only one exit. Before they could recover, poured in from the vents and doorways. "We are surrounded," shouted, requesting backup. The backup teams tried to reach them. They encountered more at every turn. The narrow corridors became killing fields. Plasma fire flashed in all directions. Smoke filled the air. The helmet cameras showed nothing but chaos. "Mission status critical," announced. "All teams begin tactical withdrawal. Repeat, all teams withdraw." "We cannot withdraw," screamed. "We are trapped, they are everywhere." On the support vessel, watched the screens. She saw and his team pressed against the walls of the storage room. She counted the surrounding them. 14 bodies, 14 puppets. They were closing in slowly, savoring the kill. The plasma rifles could not help now. The room was too small. One shot in the wrong direction would breach the outer wall and kill everyone inside. And his team had switched to close combat, but they were not trained for it. They were losing. "There has to be something we can do," said. She stood beside, watching the same screens. "We cannot just let them die." Shook his head. "We have orders, perimeter security. We are not allowed to enter the station." "Orders do not matter if they all die," said Han, another member of their squad. She was small and quiet, but her eyes were hard. "Someone has to help them." "We would be court-martialed," said. "We would be expelled from the academy. We would shame humanity." Looked at the screen one more time. She saw fall under the weight of 2. She saw his team trying to pull them off. She saw the fear in their eyes. She made her decision. She said, "Minu, are you coming?" She did not ask. She already knew his answer. Stood up immediately. "Yes." Nodded. Minu, a young man who had not spoken much during their training, grabbed his equipment and joined them. Drew her sword. The blade caught the light and seemed to glow. "Then let us go save them." They left the support vessel before anyone could stop them. The maintenance tunnels were dark and narrow. Moved through them on her hands and knees, her sword strapped to her back. Followed close behind, then and Minu. They wore only light armor. They had no heavy weapons. They were moving too fast to carry anything extra. The main corridors were blocked by. The assault teams had discovered this the hard way. But the maintenance tunnels were too small for the assault teams. Their heavy armor would not fit. Their large weapons could not be used in such tight spaces. Humans were smaller, humans fit. Had studied the station blueprints during the briefing. She had memorized every path, every junction, every possible route to the central section. She did not know why she had done this. Some instinct had told her to prepare. Now that preparation was saving lives. "Left at the next junction," she whispered. "Then down 2 levels. We will come out near the storage room." "How do you know this?" Minu asked. His voice was shaking slightly. He was scared, but he was still moving forward. That was what mattered. "I studied the maps." "Why?" "Because I wanted to be ready." They reached the junction and turned left. The tunnel sloped downward. The metal walls were cold and wet with condensation. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere ahead. Scratching, clicking. The sounds of things that were no longer alive moving through the darkness. They passed a vent grating. Looked through and saw a corridor filled with bodies. Some of them were moving. Some were not. She counted 6 controlled crew members walking in slow circles, like they were waiting for something. She kept moving. They were not here for those, they were here for and his team. The tunnel opened into a small access chamber. From there, a ladder led down to the level where the storage room was located. Stopped and listened. She could hear plasma fire somewhere in the distance. She could hear screaming. "We need to move fast," she said. "When we get down there, Minu, and we'll cover the entrance. Do not let anything else into the room. You get the wounded. Pull them to safety and treat what you can." "What about you?" asked. Drew her sword. The blade made a soft ringing sound as it left the sheath. "I will handle the..." They looked at her with strange expressions. They had seen her fight in simulations. They knew she was good, but this was not a simulation. These were real enemies. One mistake meant death or worse. Did not hesitate, she climbed down the ladder. The corridor at the bottom was filled with smoke. Red emergency lights painted everything in shades of blood. Could see the storage room ahead. The door was open. Inside she could see and his team pressed against the far wall. They were using pieces of broken equipment as shields. Their weapons were empty or damaged. They had nothing left. Between and them were 14. They turned to look at her. 14 bodies, 14 pairs of empty eyes. Some of them had once been scientists, their scales now gray and dead. Some had been small, their fur matted with dried blood. One of them had been human, a researcher from Earth who had come here looking for knowledge and found only death. Felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Not fear, not anger, something older. Something her grandmother had taught her to find in the moment before battle. Emptiness. No thought, no emotion, only action. The first moved toward her. It was wearing a body tall and strong. Its mouth opened and a sound came out. Not words, just noise, a shriek of hunger. Stepped forward and cut. Her blade moved in a perfect arc. It entered the neck and exited before the could react. The body fell. She was already moving to the next one. The second tried to grab her. She ducked under its arms and thrust upward. The blade pierced the chest and found whatever passed for a vital organ in the infected body. She pulled the blade out and spun to face the third. Behind her she heard Minu and opening fire, controlled bursts, short and precise. They were not shooting at the in the room. They were killing the ones trying to come in from outside, holding the line, buying time. Pushed past her and ran toward the trapped assault team. She was small and quick. They did not even notice her. They were focused entirely on. Good. The third and fourth attacked together. They were learning, adapting. The hive was trying to figure out how to fight this strange weapon that moved so fast. They were too slow. Had been training for this moment since she was 4 years old. 20 years of practice. 20 years of her grandmother's voice in her ear, telling her to cut faster, move smoother, breathe deeper. 20 years of cold mountain mornings and burning muscles and blisters on her hands. All of it for this. She killed the third with a diagonal cut that opened it from shoulder to hip. She killed the fourth with a thrust through the eye. The fifth lunged at her and she, letting its own momentum carry it onto her blade. The remaining 9 hesitated. They had never encountered anything like this. Their stolen memories held knowledge of plasma rifles and photon lances. They knew how to dodge energy weapons. They knew how to use cover. They knew nothing about swords. In this collective memory, no one had used swords in 10,000 years. Did not give them time to learn. She moved among them like a dancer. Her blade was an extension of her arm. She did not think about each cut. She simply cut. The form she had practiced 10 million times flowed from her body without conscious thought. The fell, 1, 2, 3. Their bodies hit the floor with wet sounds. They tried to grab her. They tried to bite her. They tried to swarm her from all sides. Nothing worked. Was not fighting like a soldier. She was fighting like something older. Something from a time when humans had no guns, no tanks, no plasma rifles. When survival meant knowing how to use a blade better than anyone trying to kill you. The 12th was the one wearing the human body, hesitated for just a moment. She looked into those empty eyes and saw nothing of the person who had once lived there, just a hollow shell filled with hunger. She killed it quickly. It was a mercy. 13, 14. The last 2 fell at almost the same time. His blade caught one across the throat and continued into the chest of the other. They dropped together in a pile of broken flesh. The room went silent. Stood in the center of the carnage. Her uniform was splattered with black blood. Her blade dripped with it. Her breathing was heavy but controlled. She counted the bodies. 14. All down, all dead. She looked up at. He stared at her with wide yellow eyes. His face was frozen in an expression she could not read. Behind him, his team watched with the same stunned silence. "Are you injured?" asked. Opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What are you?" "Human," said simply. "Can you walk?" He nodded slowly. He seemed unable to say anything else. Was already treating the wounded. 3 of his team had serious injuries. She worked quickly and professionally, stopping the bleeding and stabilizing them for transport. "We need to move," Minyu called from the entrance. "More are coming. I can hear them in the vents." Wiped her blade on a piece of cloth from one of the fallen bodies. She sheathed it in one smooth motion. "Everyone who can walk, follow me," she said. "Everyone who cannot, lean on someone who can. We are leaving." No one argued with her, not even. They moved back through the maintenance tunnels, led the way, her sword ready. They encountered small groups of twice more. Both times handled them before anyone else could react. By the time they reached the support vessel, had arrived with reinforcements. He stared at the group emerging from the station. He stared at the wounded assault team. He stared at, standing at the front with blood on her clothes and steel in her hand. "Cadet Park," he said slowly, "what have you done?" "I saved them," replied, "Instructor." She walked past him onto the ship. Behind her said nothing. He just watched her go. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. The return to Station 7 was quiet. The medical teams took the wounded to the hospital wing. The dead were counted and their families. Reports were written. Questions were asked. 41 scientists were rescued. Only 6 had died during the attack. Without the rescue mission, all 47 would have been lost. 0 cadets died. Several were injured, some seriously, but everyone survived. Against the infestation, this was nearly impossible. It was the kind of result that made the senior officers look twice at the numbers, certain there had been some mistake. There was no mistake. The official report called it a success. It praised the assault teams for their courage. It mentioned adaptive close-quarters tactics employed by the human contingent as a contributing factor. It did not go into details. But everyone on Station 7 knew the details. Stories spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Cadets whispered about the human woman who had killed 14 with a sword. They talked about how she had moved so fast that the targeting computers could not track her. They talked about the look on his face when she had saved his life. Some of them still laughed, but the laughter was different now. It had an edge of nervousness, of uncertainty. Did not pay attention to the stories. She returned to her room, cleaned her blade, and slept for 12 hours. When she woke up, she found a message waiting for her. Instructor requests a meeting. Report to his office at 1400 hours. She expected punishment. Disobeying the retreat order was a serious offense. Abandoning her assigned position was worse. She had broken nearly every rule in the Academy handbook. By any measure, she should be expelled and sent back to Earth in disgrace. She went to the meeting anyway. His office was small and simple. There were no decorations, no awards or trophies, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out into the endless black of space. Stood by the window with his back to her. His scales were a strange color, not gray or red or black, something like silver, shifting slowly in the light. "Sit," he said without turning around. Sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, stared out at the stars, waited. She had learned patience from her grandmother. She could wait for hours if necessary. Finally turned to face her. He moved slowly like someone carrying a heavy weight. When he reached his desk, he did not sit. Instead, he did something that had never seen before. He lowered his crest. Among the crest was a sign of pride and dominance. They raised it to show strength and lowered it to show respect. More than that, he tilted his head to the side, exposing his throat. This was the highest gesture of honor among his people. It meant that he trusted her completely, that he considered her an equal. Instructor said, surprised. I taught you that steel cannot stop plasma, said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. You taught me that wisdom cannot stop arrogance. He sat down across from her. His scales shifted to a warm gold color. Did not know what this meant, but it did not seem threatening. I have studied the combat recordings from the station, continued. I have watched them many times. I have shown them to the senior instructors. We have analyzed every second of your fighting. And we do not understand. Tilted her head. What do you not understand? Everything. Leaned forward. Our targeting systems could not track your blade. Our combat algorithms could not predict your movements. You killed 14 in 43 seconds. Trained soldiers with the best weapons in the galaxy could not have done that. But you did it with a piece of metal that my people stopped using before we discovered fire. He paused, his mandibles clicked slowly. Where did humans learn to fight like that? Thought about her grandmother. She thought about cold mornings on the mountain. She thought about the sword that had been passed down through 8 generations. She thought about all the blood that blade had tasted over the centuries, all the wars, all the victories, all the dead. We learned, she said, because for 10,000 years we had no one to fight but ourselves, and we never stopped. Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded slowly. The coalition has made an error, he said. We look at humanity and see a young species, primitive, barely able to leave their own world. We forget that your world was not kind. We forget that everything on your planet was trying to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, the diseases, even each other. He stood and walked back to the window. Most species have 1 or 2 great wars in their history, wars that shaped them, made them stronger, taught them how to fight. Humans have had thousands. You never stopped fighting, not because you wanted to, but because you had no choice. Your planet forced you to become warriors. He turned back to face her. We see your species as primitives because you still use physical weapons. You still train your bodies for close combat. You still teach your children to fight with their hands. His scales flashed bright silver. We forgot what that means. We forgot that primitive does not mean weak. Primitive means you have survived everything that should have killed you. Said nothing. There was nothing to say. Returned to his desk. He touched a control and a document appeared on the screen. I am placing a request with Academy Command, he said. A new elective course, close quarters blade combat, humanity's oldest martial art adapted for modern warfare. Looked at the document. She did not understand all the words, but she understood enough. You want me to teach? I want you to teach, not just humans, everyone, every cadet who wants to learn, every soldier who is willing to put aside their pride and pick up a blade. Met her eyes directly. The galaxy has forgotten how to fight up close. You remember, that knowledge could save lives. He pushed the document toward her. Will you do it? Looked at the screen for a long time. She thought about all the aliens who had laughed at her, all the instructors who had dismissed her, all the cadets who had called her primitive. Now they wanted to learn. She reached out and pressed her hand against the document, officially accepting the position. Yes, she said, I will teach them. Nodded. For just a moment, something like a smile crossed his alien face. Good, then we begin tomorrow. Years passed, the academy changed, new traditions were born. Coalition soldiers across 100 worlds started carrying blades alongside their plasma rifles. They trained in forms that had been developed on a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. They learned to fight in ways their ancestors had forgotten long ago. The practice became known as protocol, named for the sword that a stubborn human girl had refused to leave behind. And in the Academy's Hall of Valor, where the greatest heroes of the Coalition were honored, a new plaque was added. It bore the image of a simple steel blade and the words that had spoken when asked why she trusted steel over plasma. The words read, "Plasma runs out, steel remembers." In a small house in the mountains of Korea, an old woman watched the news broadcasts from space. She saw her granddaughter standing among the stars, teaching warriors from 100 worlds. She saw the blade she had carried for so many years being used in ways she had never imagined. Smiled and closed her eyes. The sword remembered. It would always remember. And now the galaxy would remember too.